Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world of golden cages, whispered threats, and silk that hides more knives than comfort. You're about to find out what happens when beauty becomes your prison and power becomes your curse. Imagine this: warm night air curling through latticed windows, the scent of jasmine thick as syrup, and footsteps you're not allowed to hear echoing on polished marble. You're not just anyone anymore. You've been chosen. And in the Ottoman harem, being chosen is the beginning of the end. You think you've made it, out of the dirt, the dust, the unwanted village life. One morning, a carriage shows up like a dream, or a nightmare with velvet cushions. You're told you've been noticed. The guards don't say who noticed you, but they speak softly, and they don't ask twice. You climb in. It smells like rose oil and horse sweat. You don't get to bring anything but your silence. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from a cozy corner of the world, drop your city and local time in the comments. I'd love to know who's drifting off where. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't see the palace until after dark. It looms, Topkapi, the teeth of empire biting into the hillside above Istanbul. The gates creak open just enough for you. Lanterns flicker like uneasy stars. Nobody explains what happens next. You're led past courtyards that smell of incense and freshly slaughtered lamb. You hear laughter. You hear crying. You try not to hear anything at all. When you finally reach the harem proper, it's nothing like the whispers in the village. There are no lounging women feeding each other grapes. There's no harp music. There's no prince. There are guards, yes, silent as ghosts and just as cold. You are now one of many, but not for long. That night, after a bath so scalding you feel your old self melt off, you're dressed in silks the color of mourning. Your hair is combed until it hurts, and then they deliver the news. The Sultan has asked for you, specifically, not later, now. You're still damp when they lead you to a quiet garden where the stars seem afraid to look. The air smells like oud and secrets. No, you don't meet him yet. That's not how it works. First, the presentation. You are inspected like a jewel. Old women poke, prod, pinch, and finally nod. You are acceptable. Barely. Historians still argue whether this selection process was structured or whimsical. Some say the Sultan had a private registry. Others that he chose on the fly, like picking pomegranates in the market. What they agree on, the Sultan's eye meant everything and could mean nothing the very next day. Still, that night, you lie awake on cool sheets, clutching your own breath like it might run away. They said you're the favorite now, but nobody says what comes next. You remember an old story. A girl once became favorite. She asked to write poetry. The next day, her bed was empty and her shoes were gone. You try not to want anything. The next morning, everything changes. Maids swarm like bees with expensive sugar. You are washed, painted, and instructed on which foot should enter a room first, the right one, always. You're given perfume that smells like gardenia and crushed fear. And a cat, for companionship, allegedly. The cat scratches you immediately. The maids call it lucky. And then the real rules begin. Not the ones in books, the living ones. You learn not to eat before another consort, not to laugh louder than a whisper, not to cry in public unless it's beautifully done, and never touch the tiles with bare feet. Nobody explains that one. You don't get to choose your name anymore. You're renamed after a flower you've never seen. Something delicate, easily wilted. That night, you sleep with one eye open. It's quiet in the harem, but not the peaceful kind. It's the kind of quiet that hides teeth. You hear footsteps behind your dreams. Being the favorite, it's like being the candle in a dark room. Everyone can see you, and some of them want to blow you out.
The next morning, the air tastes different, like honey stirred with dread. You're not a ghost in the harem anymore. You're visible now, tangible. The other women see you, not with smiles, with calculation. You walk the tiled halls of Topkapi Palace with a new name and the weight of 1,000 half-bows behind you. Every step echoes slightly longer than it should. Every glance lingers just a hair past polite. They don't need to say it. You're the new favorite. And the walls know. You're led into the Hall of Felicity, which sounds like a place for joy and laughter. It's not. It's an architectural trick of symmetry and silence, where even your heartbeat feels loud. Everything gleams, marble floors, mother-of-pearl inlay, fountains whispering behind wooden screens. You realize the sound of water is always nearby, always moving, always covering other sounds, like whispers, like secrets. You sit beside the Valid Sultan, the Sultan's mother, who smiles at you like she invented manners and would gladly revoke them. Her gaze never reaches her lips. She doesn't speak for several minutes, just watches, like she's measuring your future in teaspoons. Do not mistake affection for permanence, she finally says, and then louder, to no one in particular. The roses that bloom too fast are always the first to bleed. You laugh softly. You don't know why. Maybe because you've never felt this unsure whether you're being blessed or warned. The women around you titter politely, like bells before a funeral. Later in your chamber, you find a note. No name, just 6 words. Be careful what he remembers you for. You sleep badly. The next day, you begin the routine of being seen, which is not the same as existing. You are walked, not allowed to walk alone, through the courtyard of the black eunuchs, the privy chambers, the pavilion of the holy mantle. Everywhere, eyes, eyes with memories sharper than knives. Historians still argue whether harem politics were orchestrated by the women themselves or shaped by the Sultan's advisors. But most agree, behind every smile was a sword. You are told to practice music, not to enjoy it, just to be seen enjoying it. You sit beside a harp strung with horsehair that sings better than you ever could. A tutor comes in. He looks terrified of you, as he should. One wrong word, and he disappears. That's the thing no one warned you about. Power here is mostly about what you can destroy. Later, you try to escape the weight of the day by walking in the courtyard of the favorites. It sounds like a pleasant place. It's not. It's a garden that feels more like a fishbowl. Lilies bloom too eagerly. Peacocks strut like they know your secrets. A woman you haven't met sits beside you. I was the favorite before you, she says, not looking up. They made me wear blue. You nod. You've been assigned green. Blue means loyalty. Green means fertility. You don't know what to say, so you say nothing. She leaves before you ask her name. You don't see her again. That night, a meal is delivered to your chambers in 20 tiny dishes. You recognize none of them. One looks like pudding. One smells like beeswax. The last is a single date, sliced in half and dusted with silver. You hesitate. They say the favorite always eats alone, not for safety, but so no one sees if she doesn't finish. You eat the date. You dream of drowning in syrup. In the morning, a concubine trips in front of you, spills a jar of rose water, and begins to sob. You help her, lift her chin, smile. An hour later, you're scolded. Don't make yourself too kind. Kindness reads as weakness, and weakness makes enemies bold. You miss being invisible. You miss the anonymity of laundry and shadow. You miss knowing that your enemies didn't yet have a reason to know your name. You're told tomorrow you'll attend a private poetry reading with the Sultan himself. A great honor, a great risk. You stare at your reflection in the copper mirror and realize something. The palace gives you everything, except rest.
Imagine you're narrating an audiobook, slowly, with emotion, proper pauses, emphasis, and breathing. Keep the rhythm calm, but not monotonous. If there are quotation marks, read them like you're quoting someone. If you see 3 dots, take a gentle pause. The bathhouse is where everything happens. It's where secrets slip off shoulders like silk robes, where laughter cuts sharper than blades, where nudity isn't vulnerability, it's strategy. You enter the hammam early, hoping for solitude. Foolish. No one ever bathes alone in the harem, not unless they've been forgotten, or exiled, or both. The steam hits you like memory. Clove oil, orange peel, the clink of brass basins being filled, poured, refilled. Women glide across marble floors with practiced grace, like they're dancing in a dream they know too well. You sit on a warm stone bench and try not to look noticed. Too late. Someone is already whispering your name. Not the name you were born with is gone. The flower name, the one you still stumble over. One woman giggles, another imitates your voice, not cruelly, not kindly either. The sound echoes against the walls and stretches into a mockery that sounds familiar. You smile, just enough. That's the rule. Never show what's real, only show what works. That laugh of yours, one woman purrs, pouring water over her hair, sounds just like a parrot I once owned. They all laugh. You do too. Later, a maid wraps your hair in towels dyed saffron yellow. She tugs a bit too tightly. You don't say anything. In this place, pain is how affection hides. Historians still argue whether the hammam was a space of female empowerment or quiet imprisonment. Some scholars call it a sanctuary, others call it a stage. But all agree, everything whispered in the steam had a price. You learn that quick. The older women in the harem don't fight with fists. They fight with comments, with subtle shifts in the seating order, with who gets the rose oil and who gets the old mint. One woman has her own ivory-handled comb. She leaves it out,
just so you see it. You have a wooden one. It splinters. You bleed. You hide the blood. They see it anyway. One morning, someone switches your coal for lamp soot. You blink through tears all day, and your maid just shrugs. Better you learn early, she whispers. They only hate the ones who matter. She says it with affection, like a nurse patting a doomed child. In the evenings, you're expected to attend the gathering, a small salon of select favorites where you sit on embroidered cushions, pretend to enjoy dates dipped in honey, and listen to poetry. Not your poetry, of course. That would be arrogance. A girl once shared her own verse here. She's now working in the palace laundry. No one reads her lines anymore. Tonight, a girl reads something about pomegranates and longing. Another girl recites Rumi, but changes the last line, making it sound like a threat. Everyone claps politely. No one blinks. You say nothing. And that's when the Sultana enters. The Sultana, not the Sultan's mother, but the official consort, crowned by law, cloaked in cold. She glides into the room with the confidence of someone who's never been laughed at, never been chosen second. Her eyes fall on you. Everyone shifts slightly. She asks your name. You answer, bowing your head. She nods. Then, very softly, I once had a cat named that. It's not a compliment. Someone coughs, on cue, a diversion. The gathering ends early. You walk back to your chamber, wondering whether anyone else noticed the Sultana's fingernails, each one tipped with gold, each one capable of ruining silk with a flick. That night, a dish arrives that you didn't order. Roasted quince, your favorite. You don't eat it. Quince isn't in season, and you've never told anyone it's your favorite. You lie in bed with a full stomach and an empty mind. That's the safest way. In your dream, the Sultana is brushing your hair, and all your hair falls out in her hands. You wake up and check your pillow. Only 2 strands. For now. You tell no one.
You learn quickly, words are weapons, but silence is a blade sharpened daily. In the harem, your voice is a currency you must spend with caution. One wrong syllable can bankrupt your favor. This morning, you're summoned to join a lesson, not in poetry, not in music, but in manners. Specifically, how to speak when spoken to and when not to speak at all. The instructor is a woman older than time, with wrists like bird bones and a stare that could end dynasties. She doesn't teach so much as test. Every answer is a trap, every smile a trick mirror. She asks, "What do you say when a higher consort addresses you?" You answer politely. She raises a brow. "Wrong," she snaps. You listen. Next lesson. What do you say if asked about the Sultan's preferences? You're about to respond, but she cuts you off again. Also wrong. You say nothing. If they're asking, they already know. They want to know you know. You realize something strange. The more important you become, the less you are allowed to speak. Historians still debate whether the strict etiquette of the Ottoman harem was designed to maintain order or deliberately sow anxiety. Some argue it fostered discipline and rank. Others say it fostered paranoia and, conveniently, obedience. After the lesson, you walk the colonnaded halls and test your new skill, silence. It's oddly powerful. A younger girl tries to chat. You nod, say nothing. She blinks twice and looks away, embarrassed. You pass a group of favorites embroidering a shared tapestry. They pause. One gestures toward you. You pretend not to notice. You are learning to be unreadable. That evening, your silence is put to the test. A music night, small group, exclusive. The Sultan is said to enjoy watching the women listen. Yes, listen. Not perform, not to react too much, not too little. The perfect display of attentive restraint. You're seated close to him this time, closer than before. You can see the rings on his fingers. One is shaped like a tulip. One bears the emblem of Solomon's seal, and its gemstone seems to wink when the candlelight bends. He looks at you once, then never again that night. But you are watched. From behind the latticework, behind the curtains, behind the sashes of servants' robes, eyes catalog your every shift, every breath, every blink. You keep your hands folded. You keep your expressions soft. You listen. The oud player fumbles a note. Everyone politely pretends not to notice, except you. Your brow furrows instinctively. Only for a second. It's enough. After the event, your maid catches up to you in the hallway. "Don't make faces," she says under her breath. "Even when you think he's not watching, someone always is." You nod, exhausted. Being his favorite is like walking barefoot through a room of glass. Everyone's impressed you made it this far. No one bets on how long you'll last. You start to dream in riddles, in rooms full of voices where you have none, in dinner conversations where you open your mouth and sand pours out. In one dream, you're called to recite a poem for the Sultan and realize halfway through you're speaking in your village dialect, the one you swore to forget, the one that would mark you as unrefined. You wake with a dry throat and a sore tongue. You've bitten it in your sleep. At breakfast, a girl tells a joke, something light. It involves a parrot, a bowl of saffron rice, and a vizier's wig. You laugh. It echoes too loud. Everyone turns. You spend the rest of the day pretending it was a sneeze. They pretend to believe you. You keep your eyes on the floor and your mouth closed. The walls may have ears, but now so do the shadows.
You've gotten used to eyes, but now you realize some eyes never blink. They belong to the eunuchs. The black eunuchs of the palace are not like the others. They don't fumble, they don't flirt, they don't trip over their robes or get distracted by music. They glide, they observe, they remember. You're assigned one. He's your attendant, or your handler, or your guard, or your echo. He doesn't tell you his name. You give him one in your head. Shadow. Shadow never speaks unless spoken to, and even then, only in 5-word sentences or less. But somehow, you know he knows everything. What you dreamt, what you whispered, what you ate, what you didn't. You try smiling at him. Once. He does not return it. The eunuchs are not enemies exactly. They're more like the nervous system of the palace. Silent, efficient, everywhere. They control the doors,
the messages, the schedules, the rumors. You learn quickly nothing enters the Sultan's ears unless it's passed through theirs first. Historians still argue whether the eunuchs held true power or simply maintained the system. Some believe they were loyal to the harem women. Others believed they played all sides. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, where most dangerous truths tend to live. You see Shadow just once outside his usual rhythm. In the early morning, you catch him praying, alone, half lit by a shaft of dawn. You look away. You pretend not to notice. He pretends you didn't. That afternoon, you're brought to the Court of Petitions, a long, quiet chamber where minor grievances are reviewed. You are not supposed to be here, but Shadow has brought you. It's not a punishment, it's a lesson. You sit silently in a shadowed alcove as concubines, cooks, maids, and guards present their concerns. Some speak of missing combs. Some accuse each other of rudeness. One older concubine requests that a window be moved because the wind has started to whisper threats. No one laughs. No one questions her. You're watching the machinery of order through paranoia. And then a girl speaks up. She's trembling. She accuses another of poisoning her scent oil, claims her wrists blistered, holds them up, red and raw. The accused says nothing. The eunuch judge makes a mark in his ledger. No one is punished. No one is proven innocent. They both bow, both leave. Nothing is resolved. You realize truth is not the goal here. Harmony is, or the illusion of it. Shadow touches your elbow gently. It's time to leave. That night, someone leaves a silk sash on your bed. It's not yours. It's the color reserved for the Valide Sultan's favorites. You don't know what it means. You ask Shadow. He says only, "You've been noticed again." You don't sleep. The next morning, you're told the Sultan has requested a short walk in the imperial gardens with you. This isn't done often. You're told not to speak unless invited, not to laugh unless he laughs, not to walk ahead, not to lag behind. You are dressed in soft blue today. No jewelry, no scent, just the color of the sky before a storm. You meet him under the sycamore tree. His eyes are warmer than you expect. He says little, points out a bird, mentions the breeze, says you remind him of a painting he saw once in Tabriz. You nod politely. And then he asks, "What do you dream about?" You weren't ready for that one. You hesitate. You lie. You say, "I dream of gardens like this." He smiles. It's a real one. You return to your room with a quiet heartbeat and a louder fear, because now he's listening, and so is everyone else. That evening, Shadow lingers in your doorway. He adjusts a lantern unnecessarily. Then he whispers, "Don't dream out loud again." You nod, but inside your thoughts are already screaming. You are the favorite, which means you are the flame.
and every moth in this palace has teeth.
Breakfast now arrives in gilded dishes. You're not sure when the bowls changed from ceramic to gold, or when the maid who delivered them stopped speaking to you. Maybe it was after the walk with the Sultan. Maybe it was after the poisoned scarf incident, which no one acknowledged, but everyone somehow heard about. This morning, your tray holds a folded flatbread, quince jam, a small bowl of pistachios, and a single pomegranate, opened. Its seeds glisten like rubies in the morning light. You stare at it. It stares back. You didn't ask for pomegranate. You never do. You've learned your lesson. Because in the harem, food is never just food. It's a signal, a weapon, a test. Historians often mention the infamous kitchen of the harem, a vast operation where hundreds of dishes were prepared daily, each carefully labeled, guarded, and delivered under supervision. Yet rumors of tampering, theft, or culinary revenge swirl through the centuries like spice in tea. One fringe theory even claims the Sultan once had a favorite executed for requesting garlic. You don't ask if that story's true. You don't ask anything anymore. Instead, you wait. Shadow appears minutes later, as always. His eyes glance over the tray. He removes the pomegranate without a word, leaves the bread, leaves the pistachios. You eat too, chew slowly. They taste like dust. By noon, you're summoned to a palace feast, not one of the intimate evenings, but a grand seasonal celebration where the harem women sit behind delicate lattices and observe the court like ghosts in velvet. The feast hall smells of roasted lamb, cardamom, and risk. You're placed close enough to see the Sultan, but not speak to him. Your position, your dress, your cup, everything is symbolic. Everything screams, she matters, which makes you a target. Today, your rival wears a dress that glows gold in the sunlight. The girl next to her pours wine too slowly, spills a drop. The gold girl slaps her. Everyone laughs. Except you. You don't react. You don't blink. You sip mint water and pretend your ears aren't ringing from the sound of politeness being weaponized. After the feast, you escape to the citrus garden, not to think, just to breathe. But someone's already there. The Valid Sultan. She's trimming an orange tree herself, deliberately, calmly, as if she weren't the second most powerful person in the empire. She offers you a segment of fruit. You hesitate. Take it. It's bitter, she says before you bite. It is. Favor is like this, she adds, chewing slowly. At first sweet, then you nod. You understand. She leaves you under the orange tree with your thoughts and your peeled metaphor. Later, in the corridor, you pass a eunuch carrying a small ceramic bowl. It's covered, but you catch the scent. Rose water and crushed almonds. You flinch. It's the scent of Nazar pudding, a dessert meant to ward off the evil eye. You'd like to believe it works, but you've also seen what else rose water can cover up. At bedtime, you find a note. No sender, no signature, just the inked outline of a pomegranate. You burn it. The smoke makes your throat itch. You sleep poorly. You dream of teeth in fruit, of fingers stained red, of smiling lips with juice running down them, too thick to be juice, and always someone laughing, softly, just beyond the curtain.
You were warned.
From the moment they wrapped you in green silk, from the moment the Sultana's eyes lingered just a little too long, you knew what this favor really meant. It meant pregnancy. It meant a future you don't control, and a body you don't own. The harem exists for many reasons: political, ceremonial, aesthetic, but above all, it exists to produce heirs. And now, after the quiet visits, the lingering walks, the scented nights, the doctor is summoned. He doesn't speak directly to you. He doesn't even look you in the eye. He mumbles in Persian, nods, and leaves a note with the chief eunuch. Shadow says nothing, but he follows you a little closer now. You are congratulated, delicately, by one maid who folds your bedding with shaking hands. You are ignored by everyone else, even the cats. You try to feel something: joy, dread, power. Instead, you feel watched, heavier than before, not just with the idea of a child, but with what it means. Because the palace doesn't see a baby, it sees a threat. Historians agree that bearing a male heir elevated a concubine's status dramatically. The mother of the Sultan's child could rise to immense power, even becoming the Haseki Sultan, the chief consort. But many also note how fragile this ascent was, balanced on gossip, rivals, and survival through childbirth. You are told to rest more, eat more, think less. They move you to a quieter chamber, larger, warmer, but farther from the Sultan's private wing. Out of sight, out of favor. No one says it, but you feel the shift. One day, a tray of sweets arrives. The syrup on the baklava is unusually thick. You poke at it with a silver spoon. Just then, Shadow appears. He removes the entire tray. He says, "No food unless you saw it made." First time he's spoken in days. You nod. Later, a message arrives, ink on papyrus. You aren't allowed to keep it. It reads, "He remembers you kindly. Be grateful." Kindly. The word curls inside you like spoiled milk. That night, the women in the bathhouse avoid your eyes, even the bold ones, even the ones who used to hum when you passed. You understand. You have become the future or the problem. Possibly both. In the 7th month, an old concubine visits you. She smells like myrrh and memory. She sits without invitation and begins to braid your hair. You say nothing. She asks, "Do you know what the Valide Sultan fears most?" You wait. She finishes the braid and ties it tight. Too tight. She says, "Be careful. If the child is a boy, you'll never be alone again, not even in your own head." The next morning, a physician brings something wrapped in linen, a charm, a talisman. He says, "For protection from dreams." You ask, "Whose dreams?" He just bows. Later, during a nap, you dream of giving birth in the garden, under that same sycamore tree. The baby cries, but no one comes. You look up and see the Sultana watching you through the branches, smiling. She does not move. When you wake, your pillow is damp with sweat, or tears, or both. You rise. You walk to the lattice window and stare into the dark courtyard. No stars tonight, just silence, and the slow breath of a palace that's already planning your child's future, with or without you.
The cat
returns. You thought it had been reassigned, or retired, or turned to stone by the Sultana's glare. But there it is, perched on your cushion like it owns the bloodline. It stares at you, then begins to clean itself with theatrical boredom. You wonder, who sent it? Because cats don't just wander in the harem. They are placed, directed, sometimes used, sometimes symbolic. You stroke its fur. It doesn't bite this time. It yawns. You almost miss that kind of honesty. There's a knock. Your maid enters, one you haven't seen before. Too young, too quiet. She smiles wide. Her eyes don't. She's carrying something wrapped in silk. A gift, she says, from one of the older consorts. A gesture of goodwill. You already know better. You ask her to set it on the table. You'll open it later. She hesitates for just a second, then curtsies and leaves. You don't open the gift. You tell Shadow. He arrives silently, peels back the silk, and reveals a bracelet, delicate, gold, inscribed in Arabic. He chose her once, not you, her. You realize the bracelet's older than you are. You ask Shadow what it means. He just says, a memory someone wants you to wear. You burn the silk, not the bracelet. It goes in a drawer, unworn, for now. That night, the Sultana requests your presence. Not an invitation, a command. You're dressed in gold and ash, neutral, non-threatening, a color of obedience, a color no one will remember. The Sultana's chamber is cold despite the brazier's fire. She's painting. You didn't know she painted. The canvas shows a garden, but all the trees are leafless. She doesn't look up. You had a visitor, she says. You nod. The girl with the bracelet used to laugh too much. You say nothing. She places her brush in a bowl of wine, not water. Wine. Do you believe in omens? She asks. You reply carefully. I believe in signs. She smiles, finally. Good. Then take this as one. She gestures to the cat, now at her feet. I raised that animal since it was blind. It doesn't follow just anyone. You don't know what to say. She waves you off before you can speak. You leave without bowing. Not out of disrespect, out of instinct. That was a warning and a dare. Historians still argue whether the internal politics of the harem were orchestrated from above by the Valid or the Sultan, or whether the true power always lay among the women themselves. Either way, everyone agrees there were no accidents in proximity, only positions earned or staged. Back in your chamber, you check the drawers. The bracelet is gone. Shadow says nothing, just stares at your wrists. Do you trust anyone? You ask him. His answer comes without pause. No. You don't ask again. A few days pass. You're not summoned. You're not noticed. You're not dismissed either. You exist in a strange stasis, a ghost of favor, a whisper too recent to forget, too dangerous to acknowledge. Until one morning, a consort passes you in the corridor. She's older, wiser, and carries the scent of clove oil and careful choices. As she glides by, she murmurs,
That cat used to sleep beside another favorite before she was moved. You don't ask moved where. You already know. That evening, the cat curls beside your feet again. You stare at it long into the night. You whisper, "Who sent you?" It blinks and goes back to sleep.
You no longer know who cleans your chambers. Your old maid vanished 2 nights ago. The young one with the wide smile and stiff shoulders, gone too. No one speaks of them, not even Shadow. You try asking gently. She was reassigned, someone says, eyes down. In the harem, reassigned can mean anything. A transfer to the laundry, the kitchens, the hospital wing, or the sea, or the earth, or a place with no name at all. Now a new girl appears. She doesn't speak Turkish. She doesn't bow properly. She's too fast, too careless. You notice her folding your veil with the printed side outward, a quiet breach of etiquette. Deliberate? You pretend not to notice, but Shadow does. He adjusts the veil later, slowly, as if reminding you that the air around you has edges now. You ask him directly, "Are there spies in the harem?" He doesn't answer. Which is an answer. Of course there are, because information is the one thing more valuable than silk, perfume, or children. You start to look at everyone differently. Every servant, every concubine, every lute player who pauses too long outside your door. The old woman who refills your coal basin never meets your eyes, but you realize she's always humming the same song, every day, a lullaby about betrayal. You begin humming it too, just to see if she notices. She does. The next day, she stops coming. Shadow brings the coal now. You understand. You're being watched, recorded, filed, like a ledger someone will eventually hand to someone else, with a quiet, fatal nod. Historians point out that the harem was more than a domestic space. It was a bureaucracy of silence, where information flowed in whispers, encoded in gesture and rhythm. One fringe theory claims there was a secret language passed down only among the most trusted favorites. Half dance, half song, used to signal danger or loyalty without ever opening your mouth. You believe it. Now, when you walk slowly. Count your steps. Repeat the same path daily, not out of boredom, but so that when something is out of place, you'll know. One afternoon, you return to find your cushion missing its usual embroidery. A tiny, meaningless change, except to you. You say nothing, but that night, you leave a single almond, split, on your windowsill. The next morning, it's gone. You never mention the almond to anyone. You begin to stage your own signals. A slipper angled this way. A comb placed teeth up. A jasmine petal pressed under your goblet. You're not sure who you're speaking to, but you know someone is listening. Then it happens. You wake one night and your door is open, just slightly, a whisper of a gap, enough to see the flicker of torchlight in the corridor, enough to smell smoke. You don't call out. You just wait. And after a long, long minute, the door creaks shut again. In the morning, Shadow is there, earlier than usual. His eyes are clouded, his jaw tense. He says, "Say nothing today, to anyone." You nod. That evening, you find a gift waiting for you. A hairpin, pearl inlaid, elegant, sharp, too sharp to be decorative. You stare at it, then at Shadow. He says, from a friend. You don't ask who. You pin it into your braid. A new rule is born. Be soft to the world, steel inside. You sleep with your eyes half open, just like the cat.
The Sultan requests your presence. 6 words. You've imagined this night 1,000 times, and every version was wrong. They dress you in layers of softness, a robe so fine it clings to your skin like breath. Pearls are threaded into your hair, not too many, not too bright. You are to glow, not blind, to allure, not dazzle. There's a difference. You're bathed in oils, dusted in ground rose petals, and given a single cube of sugar to melt on your tongue. So your breath is sweet, whispers the maid. The air tastes like fear. Shadow follows you through the corridors like your shadow's shadow. He says nothing, but his pace is a little slower tonight, as if trying to delay the inevitable. You pass the courtyard of the concubines, past the peacock fountain, past the latticed windows where you used to sit and wonder what the Sultan's chamber looked like. You're about to find out. The door is opened for you, and the first thing you notice is the silence. No musicians, no incense, no feast. Just the Sultan, seated by a low fire, dressed in simple robes. He looks tired. He gestures for you to sit. You do, carefully, lightly, like your very presence could shatter the floor. He pours tea himself. The gesture is deliberate, a symbol. You're not sure of what. Power? Intimacy? Illusion? He says, "Do you remember your first night in the palace?" You nod. Of course you do. "I watched from the upper corridor," he says. "You were looking at the stars. I wondered what you were thinking." You choose your words with care. "I was wondering if they could see in." He chuckles, a soft, private sound. You drink the tea. It's warm, spiced with clove and something else, something ancient. Then the conversation shifts. He asks questions. Where you grew up, what music you liked as a child, what kind of stories your grandmother told you. Not the questions of a man in power, the questions of someone who's forgotten what curiosity feels like. You answer with grace, with half-truths, because the truth is, you no longer remember your grandmother's stories. You only remember her voice, low, tired, always interrupted by the sound of pots boiling. Still, he listens. You think, maybe this won't be so terrible. Until he says, "They say you're clever." And your stomach drops, because now it begins. That terrible balancing act, to be smart enough to amuse, but never to threaten, to be intriguing, but never unsettling, to entertain, not to educate. He asks what you think of the city, of poetry, of the stars. You answer with velvet, with mirrors, with grace. One wrong word, and you'll be remembered the wrong way. Historians still debate whether favorites were selected for their minds or merely their looks. Some scholars argue the Sultan craved wit and companionship. Others insist cleverness was a liability, an insult wrapped in beauty. They can't agree. Neither can you. Later, as the fire burns lower, he leans closer. "You speak gently," he says. "I like that." You smile. He watches your face. "You've been quiet lately," he adds. Another test. You reply, "Some silences are sacred." He nods, slowly. "Yes, and some are dangerous." He doesn't explain what he means. When you leave, your footsteps echo louder than before. The next day, everything shifts again. Women who avoided you now glance sideways. Your tea arrives with cinnamon instead of mint. Your robe is embroidered with more gold than yesterday. A bowl of pomegranates waits by your bed. You don't touch them. Shadow says, "You passed." You don't ask what the test was, because you already know. It wasn't about pleasing the Sultan. It was about not frightening him. That night, you sleep and dream of a chessboard, but all the pieces are you.
You're not supposed to speak to the scholars. But no one said anything about overhearing them. It starts in the library. Yes, the harem has one. No, it's not for you. It's for appearances, for protocol, for the Sultan's reputation. Women aren't banned from it. They're just never really expected to stay. But you linger. You've always liked the way books smell, like time trying to stay in one piece. And today, someone has left a scroll open on the desk near the window. It's a copy of a Persian fable. You recognize the story. You used to hear it during winter feasts, about a bird who sang so beautifully the king locked it in a golden cage. The bird died the next morning. The page is marked. You hear a voice behind you, male, soft, surprised. You read. You turn. A scholar, younger than expected, pale hands ink-stained, robe askew. He looks at you like he's just found a poem on two legs. You say, "No." He smiles. "Of course not." You should leave. You don't. He asks if you've ever read the Masnavi. You lie and say no. He quotes a verse anyway. It's the one about how lovers meet, not by chance, but by remembering each other in dreams. You know it by heart. You do not say that. Later, in your chambers, you think about the way he looked at you, not like a favorite, not like a rival, like a person. It's a dangerous way to be seen. Historians still argue whether intellectual interaction between concubines and court scholars ever happened. Some say the harem was a prison of softness and silk. Others insist there were pockets of subversion, quiet rebellions of the mind. You hope the latter is true. A few days later, a scroll appears in your room. Wrapped plainly, no ribbon, no seal. It's a translation of Greek philosophy, Aristotle, or someone pretending to be. The handwriting is familiar. You tuck it away behind the tapestry, not because you're afraid it'll be found, but because you're afraid it won't be. That night, during a poetry salon, you make a mistake. A poet recites a verse about love and exile. It's clumsy, forced. Everyone claps politely. You do not. You try to, but your fingers hesitate. The Sultana notices. Her fan stops mid-flutter. The room grows still. The poet bows lower than usual. His voice breaks as he thanks the ladies. He avoids your gaze entirely. Later, Shadow appears with a message. You have been requested to refrain from literary critique. You smile, just a little. The next morning, you return to the library. The scroll is gone. In its place is a different one, bland, legal, uninteresting. Property records. You don't touch it. You glance toward the hallway. The scholar is not there. But later that day, your lunch tray arrives with one extra fig. You split it in half. Inside is a tiny scrap of parchment. Even the nightingale knows when not to sing. You burn the note. You eat the fig. You forget nothing. Because here, even memory is an act of resistance. And silence? Silence is a sharp-edged jewel. You wear it now, proudly, carefully. But part of you misses the birdcage story. Not because of the king, because the bird sang anyway.
They say you're lucky. After all, you're still here. You're still in silk, still sleeping on down-stuffed pillows, still eating from silver trays with your name etched in calligraphy, still waking to a palace that bows in your direction, even when it hopes you'll fall. But there's another kind of silence now. Not the calculated hush of rivalry, not the layered quiet of strategy. This one is worse. It's the quiet of being forgotten. The Sultan hasn't summoned you in weeks. The letters have stopped. The glances, the messages, the music nights, the stories he asked you to tell. Nothing. No explanations. No reason. And so you drift. From room to room, like a candle someone forgot to snuff. At first, the other women avoid you, still cautious, still wary. But after a while, they don't look away anymore. Some smile. One nods at you in the corridor like you've joined a club no one talks about. You've become what they call a decorative ghost. Still dressed, still served, still dangerous in theory, but not in practice. You spend more time now in your chamber. The walls seem closer, the embroidery more tedious, the jasmine oil cloying. You finish an entire tapestry. You unravel it. You start again. Historians often overlook what happens to favorites after the favor ends. Some were married off to distant governors. Others faded into soft exile within the palace. A few, just a few, managed to reinvent themselves as poets, patrons, even political players behind curtains and veils. But most just embroidered. One day, you ask Shadow what happens next. He doesn't answer. Instead, he leaves a folded note on your windowsill. Breathe. Even statues gather dust slowly. You wonder if he wrote that.
You wonder who he used to guard before you, and how long they lasted. The next morning, your mirror is missing. It's not an accident. It's how they do it. First, they remove the things that show you who you are. Then, the things that remind others. Your chamber is subtly rearranged. Nothing drastic, just emptier. Your maid says it's spring cleaning. You nod, though it's autumn. The citrus tree in the courtyard is losing its leaves. You don't go to the bathhouse anymore. The last time you went, a younger girl asked you, "What did you do wrong?" You said nothing. Because the truth is, you didn't do anything. And that's the problem. You were perfect. Until you weren't necessary. One night, you wake in the dark. Not from a dream, just from a feeling. The feeling of not being looked at. The fire in the brazier has gone out. The air is cold. You wrap your robe tighter and sit by the window. Below, the palace glows faintly. Somewhere, music is playing, but not for you. You hear laughter, somewhere, but not for you. You whisper your real name, your old name, just to remember what it feels like in your mouth. It sounds foreign, but warm. You press your fingers to your lips, as if trying to hold the sound inside you, as if afraid it might escape and never return. Later, you light a candle and write something on the back of a discarded scroll. It's a line of poetry, not your best, but it's yours. You fold it and tuck it into your pillow. No one will read it, but someone might find it. And maybe that's enough. You are no longer the favorite, but you are still watching, still listening, still dangerous, in the slow, silent way the palace fears most, not because of what you might do, but because of what you still know.
You smell the smoke before you see it. It's faint at first, sweet, woody, sandalwood maybe, but under it something darker, something wrong. You step into the corridor and see the glow. Far off, beyond the courtyard of the black eunuchs, a column of smoke curls upward like a question mark written in fire. Servants rush past in a blur of silk and panic. Shouts echo down the tiled halls, too sharp to be in Turkish. Somewhere, a cat yowls. The harem is burning. Not all of it, just a wing. But fire doesn't need much. You freeze, not from fear of flames, but from the knowledge of what fire means here. Fire is rarely just an accident. Fire has memory. Fire has blame. And someone always chooses who the blame belongs to. You hear footsteps. Shadow appears beside you, ghost still as ever. He doesn't speak. You say, "Was it me?" He says, "Not yet." You don't ask what that means. You already know. Historians still argue about the great fire of the palace harem. Some say it was a cooking accident, others a candle left untended. but there are whispers of a silk scarf soaked in oil, a curtain drawn too early, a shadow disappearing into the kitchens. Some say it was a warning. Some say it was a purge. What you know is this: 2 women don't return. One is the girl who asked you, "What did you do wrong?" in the bathhouse. The other is one you never learned the name of, but she always plucked dates from her tray before touching anything else. You remember the silence that followed her laughter. After the fire is contained, the harem is locked down. No visitors, no feasts, no music. No word from the Sultan. You sit in your chamber, waiting, not for answers, for accusations. They arrive the next day. A eunuch you don't know comes with a sealed scroll. You are to appear before the Council of Women, an inner circle of senior consorts, the Valid Sultan, and 2 palace legal scribes. It is not a trial. It is not a punishment. It is worse. It is a conversation with no questions. They gather in a marble salon that smells of wilted carnations and tension. You stand barefoot as instructed. The Valid speaks first. "We are deeply saddened," she says, "by the loss. No one asks what you know. No one accuses you of anything. Instead, they ask how you've been sleeping. They ask if you remember what time your lantern was extinguished. They ask if you've seen any unfamiliar maids. Each question is soft, drenched in concern. You answer carefully, neutrally, vaguely. When you're dismissed, a single slipper is missing from the doorway. It is returned the next day, cleaned. Shadow says, "They're watching to see if you stumble." That night, you hear footsteps outside again. This time, you rise before the knock. You open the door yourself. The Sultan is there, alone. No guards, no ceremony. His robe is simple, his face unreadable. You both stand in the flickering lantern light like actors who've forgotten the script. "I heard you spoke well," he says. You bow. "I spoke carefully." He almost smiles. "I've forgotten what your voice sounds like in sunlight," he says. You want to reply something poetic. Instead, you say, "I still wake early." He steps closer, looks down at your hands, empty. "I miss the poems," he says. You nod. "I left them in the fire." He nods too. Maybe he understands. Maybe he doesn't. When he leaves, he does not touch you. He does not summon you the next day. But a new robe arrives. Gray silk. No embroidery. No perfume. Just soft, durable cloth. A whisper of survival. You wear it proudly, because now you know fire doesn't just consume, it clears. The days pass like silk unraveling. Soft, slow, silent. You walk the palace like a statue that forgot how to be stone. no longer watched with envy, no longer ignored entirely. You occupy that dangerous middle place, the one where memory becomes myth, and people start to whisper not what you are, but what you might have been. The robe they gave you, the gray one, is both a shield and a sentence. It marks you as neutral, not in favor, not in disgrace, invisible, but for everyone's convenience. Even the cat avoids your lap now. One morning, you hear a servant refer to you as the quiet one. Another says, "She's still here?" It stings. Not because it's cruel, but because it's accurate. Then comes the news. The Sultan has taken a new favorite. She's young, bright. Her laughter drips like honey through the marble halls. The kind of girl who still believes perfume can hide fear. The kind who hasn't learned the palace will one day sharpen that laughter into a weapon. You see her once from a distance. Her robes are purple, a dangerous color. Royal, yes, but also bold, risky. She smiles at you. You do not smile back. Because you know every favorite is a time bomb. Even the sweet ones, especially the sweet ones. Historians note that Topkapi Palace housed dozens, sometimes hundreds of women, but only a few were ever remembered. Some carved power into marble. Others vanished between curtain folds. Most lived and died without footnotes. You're not sure which one you are yet. But then, something strange happens. The Valid Sultan requests your presence. Not for punishment, not for ceremony, just for tea. You're escorted to her private garden, a cloistered paradise where the air always smells faintly of citrus and iron. She pours the tea herself. "You've lasted longer than most," she says, without greeting. You thank her, carefully. "I think the Sultan forgot why he liked you," she adds, stirring her cup. You stay silent. She sets the spoon down, then looks directly at you for the first time in weeks. But you are remembered. That lands like a weight and a blessing. Because in the harem, to be remembered is currency, even if it's not fondly. She hands you a small package, wrapped in thin silk, the color of dust. Inside is a single ring, gold, old, simple. You recognize it from her hand. She used to wear it during council gatherings, always on her left thumb. You look up, confused. She sips her tea. Every quiet one needs a second voice. You bow, deeply. You don't ask what it means, because it might mean nothing, or everything. The next few days, people look at you differently. Servants pause. Eunuchs nod, barely. Your old chamber is cleaned more often. The jasmine returns. Even shadow straightens your veil once without being asked. One morning, as you pass through the courtyard of the favorites, a voice murmurs behind you. "She's still here?" And this time, it doesn't sting. it sings. That evening, the Sultan walks through the gardens. You spot him from your window. He stops, looks up, not at your window specifically, just toward it, like he remembers something, but can't quite name it. That's fine, because now you're not the favorite. You're the memory. And memory lasts longer, even than beauty, even than power, even than names. You sleep that night with the ring beside your pillow, and when you dream, it is not of being chosen again. It is of watching a purple-robed girl smile and whispering to yourself, "Don't be too dazzling. They always see you better in the dark." They say there are 3 ways to leave the harem. 1. You rise so high you become untouchable, the Valide herself, matriarch of the empire, a shadow behind every throne. 2. You're married off to some distant governor or minor prince, your favor traded like a fine jewel to cement alliances no one will explain to you. 3. You vanish. The vanishing can mean many things: a sudden illness, a reassignment, a polite silence that stretches forever. Some girls leave with a procession, some without a single goodbye. You start to wonder which way will be yours. You're no longer the favorite. You're not disgraced. You're not married. You're suspended. And yet, something is shifting. One morning, Shadow delivers a message. Not a scroll, not a summons, a simple spoken phrase. The Sultan has arranged a posting. You're to be transferred to Bursa, not a punishment, not an exile, and an honor. So they say. You're to live in a villa once built for a retired consort, overlooking gardens and silk trees. You will receive a stipend. You may bring your maid and your cat. Yes, the cat has returned. Of course it has. You ask, why now? Shadow says only, because it's time. Historians have long noted that the Sultan's former favorites were often moved away from the palace, not just for practical reasons, but to clear space, emotionally, politically, symbolically. You're not bitter, just curious. What happens to a woman after the palace has finished looking at her? On your last night in Topkapi, you walk the halls one final time, past the courtyard of the concubines, past the library with its locked scrolls, past the orange tree that still hasn't regrown its leaves. The Valide Sultan does not come to say goodbye. She doesn't need to. The ring still sits in your pocket. The young favorite in purple smiles at you as you pass. You smile back, finally, just enough. You whisper, "It won't last." She laughs like she thinks you're joking. Let her. In the morning, you're led to a carriage, the same kind you once arrived in, the same rose-scented cushions, the same heavy silence. You wonder what the city will smell like, if the sky will look different from Bursa, if freedom tastes as strange as memory. Before the gates close behind you, you look back just once.
Topkapi looms. Not cruel, not kind, just watching. Always. You exhale, not out of relief, out of something else. You don't need to be remembered here. You remember yourself now. The girl who once stood barefoot in a golden prison. The woman who learned to survive it. And somewhere inside that silence, you hear the softest voice whisper, "You were never just his favorite. You were your own. And you were your own." Wind down 300 words. And now, the fire is out. The hallways have faded to quiet stone, and Topkapi sleeps again. You've left behind the corridors where footsteps echoed like secrets. You folded your silks, packed your silence, and stepped into a world without lattice shadows. There's no need to rush now. Let your breath settle. Think of the orange blossoms, even if they never bloomed again. Think of the way the cat returned, just when you thought it had chosen someone else. Let those memories be soft, not sharp, not edged, not watching, just drifting. Let the stars you once wondered about stretch far over Bursa or anywhere else you wish. Let your name, whatever it truly is, feel warm again in your mouth. And if the wind stirs a curtain somewhere, and someone behind it still remembers you, let them. Let them wonder. Let them whisper. You no longer belong to them. You belong to peace. So lie back now. Sink into the quiet that has no teeth. The kind that isn't strategy. The kind that doesn't watch you sleep. You are no longer a favorite. You are free. And your dreams? They are yours now. Entirely. Sweet dreams.